Jennifer Powers, Director of Unplugged Coalition. Good morning.
Good morning, Nicky.
Will Guyot, tech journalist, former head of communications for Instagram. Hello. Will, our overarching question on this, do our children need protecting from big tech?
Yeah,
Will.
they do. They definitely do. However, we all have differing views of how that should extend. So you find yourself in these situations where how do you proportionately deal with these companies and bring them to the table? Nobody yet has that answer, but we need more of it, and we need more collaboration rather than ban this, ban that. There needs to be more nuanced conversations. But I'm not going to say... I can understand why some people would want to ban it, Nicky. It's not where I sit, and it's not where many online safety experts sit either.
Jennifer, he's going to talk, Jennifer Powers, Director of the Unplugged Coalition, about the fact, he says, if we're serious about making sure every child has the opportunity to succeed, we need to put these building blocks in place. He says that it's holding children back, it's holding a lot of children back, and he says that it is quietly harming our children. Do you agree with that phrase?
I absolutely do agree with that. And you opened this segment by talking about his interesting turn of phrase around undoing social media, potentially undoing all the work he's trying to achieve on social mobility, I presume, children fulfilling their potential. And I actually think that he's on to something there, or his speechwriters are on to something there, because what we're seeing even now already in schools is a growing divide, which is not driven necessarily by socioeconomic circumstances of those children, but a growing divide based on how early and how frequency their consumption of screens and social media is. Because we know, for instance, that a lot of children are sadly turning up at reception with delayed speech and language skills because they have been raised on tablets and smartphones as babies and toddlers. So we know that it's impacting their speech and language, their cognitive development, their socialization skills. And then as we get into children getting their own social media accounts, which they do in huge numbers, and their own smartphones as devices, that access is becoming even greater, and all of the harms are dose relational. So we know that the more consumption children have of social media, group chat, the more negatively impacted they are. So I very much welcome the Prime Minister's admittedly belated intervention, but nonetheless, now that he's come out and said they're going to do something, I welcome it.
Well, you're a stalwart campaigner on this. It's always so interesting to hear your voice. The stats, as you teed up at the beginning, children aged 8 to 17 spend between 2 and 5 hours online per day. It's a wide age spread there. Nearly every child over 12 has a mobile phone. Almost all of them watch videos on platforms like YouTube or TikTok. About half of children over 12 think being online is good for their mental health. Would you want to stop a 13-year-old from watching YouTube?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think what we have to bear in mind is that this is about trade-offs. And so by putting in place some restrictions, there are going to be some fun, entertaining things or positive experiences that some children will miss out on. But if we look at the totality of the impact of these technologies on children's welfare and well-being, we know that overall it has a net negative impact. Therefore, we do have to draw lines somewhere. And, you know, I agree with Will that these things aren't necessarily easy, and that there's potential consequences of bringing in restrictions. But I don't think that's a reason not to try. I don't think that we necessarily need to debate this endlessly. Or
but where will a 14-year-old Manchester City fan watch their team's amazing goals? Where will never mind a 64-year-old rugby union fan watching the cult all over again. But what I mean, okay, 14-year-old wants to watch Man City, wants to watch all those brilliant Haaland goals. Not on YouTube though. Where?
Well, listen, the people talk about having a ban. I mean, even in Australia, they haven't banned social media for under 16s. It's just a really easy way of encapsulating the regulations, which actually stop children under 16 from having their own accounts. It doesn't stop them consuming the video content. And so I think that's a really reasonable thing, a really modest and reasonable step
So, Mum,
for the government to take.
I want to watch some football on YouTube. Okay, here you go. But it's my account that you're watching it on, basically.
Yeah, and I
Not
think
protected.
Sorry, Will. Hang on. Will said something interesting. Wait a minute, Will.
If you have a children's account on YouTube, you are screened from certain content. If you hand over your adult's YouTube account to a child, you might see advertising you don't want them to see. You might want to see other stuff there. I don't want to have a row with Jennifer because I actually think she's got some really valid things to say. I am going to pick up on one point. You said that we all know the experience of social media on technology is overwhelmingly negative on children. I'd like some empirical evidence. I'd like some actual proof. Vibe is fine.
Loads of evidence. Loads of evidence.
Let me finish what I'm saying.
Let him finish.
And vibe is fine, but there is no actual really clear understanding of the impact on young people. There are people speaking vocally in both senses. I wouldn't want somebody listening to this who hasn't made up their decision to think that the use of technology for young people is overwhelmingly negative. I'd like them to make their own decision, not be told that the data is there when the data is frankly not there, as anybody will tell you. There are things that point either way, but nobody has done enough of a survey and research to prove categorically the impact on young people. Just vibe and feeling at the moment.
Causation is a very high scientific bar. I will agree with you on that, but I'm going to push back and I'm actually going to get quite specific. So I'm not saying that technology as a whole has a negative impact on children. There are obviously wonderful uses of technology for people of all ages. I'm talking specifically about addictive by design platform and devices. We're talking about chatbots. We're talking about social media. We're talking about group chat. We're talking about smartphones in the hands of 5 or 10-year-olds, right? And so in those cases, I do think there's a significant and growing base of evidence that those things are not A, necessary for childhood, and B, detrimental. So at least on that, I hope we'd agree. On your point about YouTube, yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting area where we would need to, think about what restrictions are in place. I mean, quite frankly, the children's YouTube is not fail-safe. There are times that children are watching it when bad stuff does get through. None of these filters are perfect. And I think whilst I welcome restrictions in a whole range of areas, I don't maintain that any one of them is going to be sufficient. I think we need to do a range of things. And ultimately, I want parents and children to be able to enjoy the internet together. I think children should learn how to use it under supervised environments, either at school or at home. I don't think it's something that we should give our children unrestricted access to.
I agree.
And I do agree that what's brought in Australia isn't the whole answer. I do think that AI companions and some video games, which allow communication between adults and children and where children are groomed and exploited potentially, do need to be brought into any restrictions the government brings in. So in summary, I'm really excited. I'm really hopeful that the government is serious. We've only had rhetoric to date rather than action, and I really hope the government lives up to its words.
Well, the fact that you two are agreeing to agree and also agreeing to disagree shows that there is here which it's really worth exploring, and it also shows that there are massive challenges for anyone who's legislating. And this is what we want. It's half term. Damien in Ashford, head teacher. Is big tech harming our kids, Damien?
Yes, I think there's enough of picking up on Jennifer's point around evidence and things. 98% of teachers are now calling for the government to do more, and you never get that much of a groundswell of teachers agreeing on anything. So I think this is one thing where you are getting agreement. You're getting parents on mass saying we need more action. You're getting teachers saying we need more action. Yeah, we know that big tech having a really negative impact on our young people.
That's why he sees in the country a lot of parents saying this must happen, this should happen, or something has to happen. Kemi Badenoch recently called for that ban as well. Do you think there should be a ban for under 16s, Damien?
I think there should be a ban. We know that the average teenager is spending around 5 hours a day on social media, and the sad thing is most parents most children are getting onto social media because they think that they will be more connected to their friends. When I speak to children in school, they say that we've got this because we want to stay in chat. And what they're not seeing is these things are designed to be addictive. They're designed to keep them hooked. 5 hours a day online doesn't happen by accident. It's because of the doom scrolling. It's because of the constant thread of videos. And then there's the algorithms just pumping really toxic, damaging content to young people, which quite frankly, we need action on. We need the government to take this action.
But Connor in North Devon, first of all, some great people coming to the table. Founder of a youth mental health group, 20 years old. Hi, Connor. How are you doing?
Good morning.
And what do you think about the possibility of a blanket ban for under 16s?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, that a blanket ban isn't the right solution. I think that we should be upskilling young people and teaching young people to know tech instead of no tech.
Ah, yes, very good. There's the T-shirt, no tech rather than no tech. And this is the argument, isn't it, that the NSPCC, among others, are making. You can't suddenly have that deluge of stuff on your 16th birthday. You have to be savvy, Connor. That's the argument, isn't it?
Absolutely. I sit on a coalition with several charities, including ChildNet. And yeah, we sit there and we say that we need to teach young people as soon as they turn 16, they don't just magically overnight have the skills to learn social media. So actually, we need to teach young people how to use it. And yeah, there's so many benefits to it. And yes, there are negatives, but a lot of the time there are more positive than negatives. How do you deal with it? Well, there's equally so many ways in which young people also use social media for positive. So sort of what I say a lot of the time is actually use to some extent and choose what accounts you follow, what you engage with, what you like. And you can kind of, if you follow more cat memes and funnier stuff, you're more likely to have an algorithm which is more based around that. And yes, there are exceptions to that, but a lot of the time for young people, it's about really understanding what you engage with, and then that can sort of change your algorithm to build that.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, I'll let you come in here. Jennifer, speak to Connor.
Yeah, so thank you, Nicky, for bringing me in. Yeah, I just don't buy this, that we have to put the burden back on kids to make good choices and to learn how to control the algorithm. I think that's a really unfair burden to put on them. If you're 5 or 9 or 12, you shouldn't have to figure out how to control the dragon that is the addictive by design algorithms. I think as parents, as educators, as political leaders, it's our role to really create guardrails and to keep our children as safe as possible. So I'm going to have to disagree quite vehemently with Patty about, teaching children these tips and hints to control the algorithm. I think is completely unfair burden on kids. And I think it's actually the line that the tech companies have been pushing on all of us since this stuff started 15, 20 years ago. They've been urging us that, get your child online early and often. They're selling this ed tech into schools. They're making parents fear that their child's going to miss out if they don't develop these deep digital skills, that they're going to become redundant when they grow up and to be in the labor market. And it couldn't really be the furthest thing from the truth, because, we all know that it takes a child only a minute or two to learn how to use an app. The idea that we have to marinate children.
That's because they've been doing it from the age of 10.
Well, the idea that they have to be on that for ages in order to be able to use something when they're 16 or 18. I actually had someone debate me on this once who told me with a straight face that our children needed to be on the internet early so they could learn how to use the NHS app when they're 16. I mean, some of these arguments are just laughable.
Well, there's never been a... Yes, you can, but just let me say there's never been a stronger argument in the changing job market for, kids, young people to be super savvy about this stuff. Connor, come back on that. I mean, you're agreeing with me.
I totally agree. I think we're in such a digital climate now. And if young people aren't being taught how to use it, then they are going to fall behind on this current job market. I put it bluntly, I wouldn't have a career right now if I wasn't allowed social media before the age of 16, because at 14 I set up my charity using social media. and I would not have the job I'm in now.
Something we're seeing in schools. In terms of this concept of children having to learn, lots and lots of our children saw the Charlie Kirk content and were deeply impacted by it, and we're not really sure how to make sense of it. And to say that you know, we're living in a digital world, well, that's a choice. Are we choosing to live in a digital world, or do we want children to interact with each other? Do we want them to spend more time talking in person, or do we want to drive them towards social media? Because I think the concept that they need to be online to learn how to be digital citizens, quite frankly, that's a narrative that's been sold by EdTech. That's not something that is part of a child's development, or this is something they need. That's something that they are being fed, and that's the choice we're making.
They might be being sold that narrative because it has more than a grain of truth. When you say they saw the Charlie Kirk content, are you saying that they actually saw footage of him being shot?
Yeah, the vast majority of children in my academy, without going searching for it, a lot of them said they didn't even look for it, had been pumped this content through the algorithm. And
of him dying.
We're coming to talk of the actual incident, and we're then coming to speak to teachers because, you know, if they'd seen that in real life, that there would be mental health professionals, there would be a whole wealth of teams to support children.
Jennifer, can I just come back? I just want to make sure that your listeners don't think that people like Damien and myself are claiming that children shouldn't be taught how to use technology. That's absolutely not what we're saying. You know, there's a role for schools, there's a role for parents to do that. That's absolutely fantastic. What we're talking about here is social media and AI chatbots and smartphones in the hands of children. And those are things we can and should restrict. And I also don't believe we need more guidance on how to be safer online. We need to reclaim childhood from the digital sphere whilst teaching children the skills they'll need for later on. And I hope your listeners agree, and we continue to put pressure on the government to act.
Well, okay, tell me about the Reformation in England. I'm not asking any of you, look, guys. I'm just putting it into my chat bot here because this is so useful if you're studying history, GCSE or whatever. Oh, look at this. It's all there. It's coming at me. It's a cascade of Reformation stuff and references as well towards me. That's brilliant stuff, Jennifer. I'm not going to read it to you. But it's
that's absolutely right. There's a wealth of information online, but it's not something that you would encourage your primary school child to do without some sort of supervision. I think what campaigners like myself are calling for is really common sense. It's really modest. And I really hope the government follows through on what the Prime Minister is due to say shortly, and that they actually do act on the most egregious elements of this online world.
Immediately. Thank you. Great stuff. Thank you, Jennifer and Will and Damien and Connor.